This is ILTV on the hour, bringing you the biggest stories from Israel and the Middle East. It's currently 2 p.m. here in Israel and 7 a.m. in New York. I'm Shosh Bedrosian, and today is day 670 of the war in Gaza. Let's get into all the top headlines at this hour. Netanyahu met with senior security officials overnight for nearly 3 hours to hammer out Gaza war plans and reportedly came out in favor of the army taking control of the entire enclave, even if it meant that the remaining hostages could be harmed or executed by Hamas. The meeting came amid reports of rising tensions between Prime Minister Netanyahu and IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir over the prospect of the IDF fully occupying the enclave. A statement from the Prime Minister's office said that the IDF is prepared to implement any decision made by the Security Cabinet. The meeting aimed to finalize a plan to present to a broader cabinet session later this week. Netanyahu, while visiting a base in central Israel, reiterated the government's war objectives. Let's take a listen.
ההישגים האלה כמובן הם מאחורינו, אבל עדיין יש צורך להשלים את תבוסת האויב בעזה, לשחרר את כל חטופינו, להבטיח שעזה לא תהווה יותר איום על ישראל. אנחנו לא מוותרים על אף אחת מהמשימות הללו, ואנחנו נעשה את זה יחד באמצעות ההקרבה הגדולה של הלוחמים שלנו והלוחמות שלנו.
Meanwhile, United States President Trump has declined to say whether he supports or opposes the potential full Israeli occupation of Gaza. Trump indicated that his main focus is getting the civilians in Gaza fed. And as for the military operation inside of the enclave, well, Trump said that would be left for Israel to decide. New reporting from Axios indicates that Trump wants to actually take over the full Gaza aid effort after Witkoff's visit to the enclave, citing an official that says the Trump administration believes Israel isn't handling it adequately. Here's what Trump had to say earlier in the day, just overnight actually, about Israel possibly occupying the Gaza Strip. Take a listen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would you support Israel reoccupying all of Gaza, as has been suggested by some Israeli officials?
Well, I don't know what the suggestion is. I know that we are there now trying to get people fed. As you know, $60 million was given by the United States fairly recently to supply food, and a lot of food, frankly, for the people of Gaza that are obviously not doing too well with the food. And I know Israel is going to help us with that in terms of distribution and also money. We also have the Arab states are going to help us with that in terms of the money and possibly distribution. So that's what I'm focused on. As far as the rest of it, I really can't say. That's going to be pretty much up to Israel.
Right there, President Trump saying his top priority is making sure people of the Gaza Strip are fed. And the Israeli Ministry of Defense and Kogat have approved a new mechanism for the distribution of Gaza aid with the use of local merchants. Now, the move comes as Israel continues to face mounting pressure regarding the humanitarian conditions of Gazan civilians reached new heights just last week, and concerns for starvation and hunger inside of the Gaza Strip over the last few weeks. The new mechanism will allow goods into Gaza in a gradual and controlled manner, coordinated by Kogat, and will only allow the purchase from these local merchants to be made via a systematic bank transfer. Kogat says that several local merchants will receive basic food products like baby food, fruits and vegetables, and hygiene supplies, and all goods will undergo border inspection before entry. In the meantime, over 300 truckloads of aid have already been collected by the UN and other international groups in the past 24 hours. Also, we know that international airdrops of supplies are also ongoing. Joining us now to discuss is Brigadier General Reserves Yossi Kuperwasser, an Israeli intelligence and security expert. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yossi, I first want to discuss this possibility of a full Gaza military takeover. At this point in time, the military says they have operational control of about 75% of the Gaza Strip. What other areas would the IDF need to take over, and what does a full takeover effectively look like?
Well, first of all, we control 75% of the territory of Gaza, but we don't control almost very few of the people of Gaza. All of them are concentrated in the city of Gaza itself, and in the western part of the city of Khan Yunis, in the city of Deir al-Balach, and in some refugee camps like Morazi and then Seirat. All of these places will have to be taken over by the IDF so that we should be able to say that full occupation of Gaza is finished and done. And this is going to be a big effort because these are deep, densely populated areas. So we shall need, first of all, to convince the people living there to evacuate the place so that we should be able to fight against the Hamas operatives and not against, or not while population is still there. It's going to take a while to evacuate the people and to take over the entire territory. It's going to take a while. It's a military move. But coming back to what we heard from President Trump, I think the full occupation of Gaza by his IDF is the best chance for the people of Gaza to get their humanitarian aid in an orderly fashion, because until now Hamas controls what's happening with the population, and they steal much of the aid, and there's a lot of chaos when distribution happens. And once Israel is going to take over, this is going to be done properly.
I want to ask you if this full military takeover is, in fact, if it is decided on, how is Israel okay with the fact that it could risk the lives of some of the hostages?
They are not okay, but the lives of the hostages are being risked, under risk anyhow. We saw the last videos and video clips, that we understand how difficult and dangerous the situation of the hostages is. And what we are trying to do is to change the logic of the war. Because until now, the war was fought under the logic that Hamas will stay in power in Gaza because Israel is not willing to take the necessary steps in order to reoccupy Gaza. So it means that Hamas stays in power, and this means that they don't have any incentive to discuss hostage deal, and that's why they left the negotiations, and we were left without a deal. So we hope that by changing the logic, that would put some pressure on Hamas and once they understand that they're going to lose Gaza, they might eventually come to their senses and consider a deal for releasing the hostages. That's one last chance that the hostages have, because if we continue to do what we have done until now, the Hamas doesn't have the incentive to release the hostages. So that's the fact of the matter. They don't come to the negotiation table even.
Right, because we've also learned that Hamas uses the hostages as power. It's really the only power experts have told me that Hamas has. Keeping these hostages keeps them in power, and it keeps this war also ongoing. We know that Netanyahu said yesterday.
They have two sources of power. They have two sources of power. The hostages. They have two sources of power. The hostages, and their understanding that Israel is reluctant to take control of Gaza. These are the two sources of power that they translate these two things in order to gain international support, and with their fake campaign about starvation. And that's what's happening, and we have to change the logic of the way things are going.
Right. I want to ask just more about this potential Gaza takeover. How will a full-scale takeover of the enclave by Israel be perceived by the world? You just mentioned right now what you said, a campaign by Hamas of starvation, which also keeps them in power. But what about this? How would Israel be perceived if they completely take over the Gaza Strip militarily?
Well, I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of criticism, but if we do it properly, we can mitigate the problem. Because if we evacuate the population before we enter with military force into the Gaza city, then there are going to be less civilians in harm's way. And of course, Hamas is going to keep some of them as human shields. That's to be expected, but I hope not many. And like that, we can mitigate the damage. And also, as I said before, the potential of better distribution of aid once Israel is in charge is something that the international community should praise and look for and not criticize.
Let's move over and talk about the humanitarian aid situation inside of Gaza. We know Israel has significantly boosted aid just starting within the last week and a half, but American and Israeli officials continue to say the crisis was man-made by Hamas on purpose as they continue to steal the aid with the objective to starve their own people. Has the situation in Gaza gotten any better since this aid has come in from what you have heard? Has it made a difference? I'm assuming it has because there is an enormous amount of aid coming in. We have these brand new airdrops that Israel has now begun participating in just, about 10 days ago.
Of course, Israel has taken a series of steps in order to improve the food distribution in Gaza. First of all, we continue to use the GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, in order to disseminate aid in southern Gaza and central Gaza. Secondly, we are now allowing merchants, Gaza merchants, to bring in humanitarian food as well, humanitarian aid as well, and this is going to ease the pressure a little bit. Third, there are the airdrops, and there are many airdrops happening. This is not a lot of food, but it still reaches the goals, the targets directly. It doesn't go through Hamas, which is by itself an important development. And many of the trucks that were waiting to be collected by the UN agencies that are supposed to distribute the aid have been collected finally. So the trucks are moving into the Gaza Strip. Some of them are being looted by the population, as you can see here in the pictures. But some of them make their way all the way to the distribution centers. Of course, some of them are also looted by Hamas. We saw some trucks that Hamas took over, and that's happening too. But some of them eventually reach the target. So the situation has been better now, but still there are problems. And just so the ones that Hamas took over. The situation is better now. It's still bad. It's the distribution of aid is not done properly. And as I said, only once we take over the Gaza Strip from Hamas, we shall be able to make sure that everybody gets the aid as they should.
So you mentioned there the looting of aid by Hamas. We're also learning about this new data the United Nations Office for Project Services just released, which shows that since May 19th, when humanitarian aid deliveries resumed inside of the Gaza Strip, until today, nearly 89% of aid trucks collected by the United Nations were intercepted and did not reach their intended destinations inside of the enclave. The organization says it was either intercepted peaceful by hungry people or forcefully by armed actors during transit into Gaza. What's your take on this statistic that's come out? 89% of these deliveries were intercepted.
It says exactly what I was saying now, that a lot of it is being looted either by the population, that is less worrying when it's looted by the population, but eventually it at least reaches those who need it. But not in a way that is properly distributed between all the people who need it. And some of it is looted by the Hamas itself, and 82% is 89%. It's a huge percent. Very little reaches the people that need it in a proper manner. It's really very painful to hear these numbers. It tells you that this entire effort to distribute aid is disturbed by those who don't want the aid to reach the goals and want to profit from looting it, and be it Hamas or be it all kinds of gangs of criminals that do that.
Yeah, we will continue to follow all of the updates, especially on the humanitarian aid that is and efforts that are continuing inside of the Gaza Strip. Thanks so much for joining and for being with us today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And just a little while ago, we played on your screen videos of two hostages that Hamas and PIJ released. We know that a group of Holocaust survivors visited Hostages Square in Tel Aviv, where they appealed for a hostage and a ceasefire deal. The four survivors of Nazi death camps came to show support and solidarity with the families of the hostages. It all comes less than a week after Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad released horrifying videos of the state fate of two Israeli hostages, Evyatar David and Braslavski, both showing obvious signs of starvation, with David's bones nearly sticking out of his body. He was also forced to dig his own grave. Let's take a listen to what one of the survivors said yesterday.
But the hunger that we saw there, it made me so, I can't explain how sad, unbelievable people are.
And Israel's foreign minister slammed the international community at the United Nations this week, warning that global silence is enabling Hamas and endangering the lives of hostages still held in Gaza. At a tense UN Security Council session in New York, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar accused the international community of turning a blind eye to Hamas's atrocities while pressuring Israel in the midst of war. The session was called by Israel after Hamas released these two new videos showing David and Braslavski, like we said, in horrific, weak, emaciated conditions, living in inhumane ways in these tunnels. Israel says the men are being deliberately starved and tortured by Hamas and PIJ as a part of a propaganda campaign, while terrorists continue to enjoy full access to food and medical care. Israel invited the brother of Evyatar David to speak after Hamas released that video of him. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
My brother was a living skeleton. He had barely the strength to move or speak. His voice barely recognizable. In that video, my little brother was forced to speak to the world and then actively began to dig his own grave inside a filthy, dark tunnel in Gaza. My mother and I could not even bring ourselves to watch it.
And we heard from his brother there, Illay David. He also mentioned he has not seen the video. He's afraid of what it would possibly do to him because of how painful it was. I remember when it was released, the first part, just Shabbat last week, it was very chilling, very hard, difficult for people in Israel to even get themselves to watch it. Joining us now to discuss is former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Danny Ayalon. Thanks so much for being with us today, as always.
You're welcome.
Now, Donnie, these images of Rome and Evyatar are beyond difficult to watch. What was it like when you first saw them?
Oh, I think it's just, you get the goosebumps all over the body. I think it's heart-wrenching, it's gut-wrenching, and the fact that the Holocaust survivors are empathizing with that show you the extreme and the enormity of the torture and the poor conditions, including starvation, that our hostages suffer under Hamas. And it is unbelievable that there is no outcry by the international community in a much more intensity and effective way.
We also saw a sharp difference, the way in which Palestinians who are suffering in the Gaza Strip compared to the hostages be written about and talked about in mainstream media, specifically, in the West, not really even putting their images up, on the front page the same way that they did with people who are suffering inside of the Gaza Strip. Israel continues to say that the hostages are being deliberately starved as a form of Hamas's campaign. Can you explain to me what that campaign is, and for people who don't understand why Hamas would be creating something like this?
Well, it's outrageous, and the despicable behavior of Hamas is glaring for everyone to see. The fact that the entire international community, except the United States, is looking the other way, I think is shameful. And this would be remembered for a long time. We have to understand that the root cause of everything in Gaza is the Hamas. It's the 7th of October. It's the fact that Hamas uses their own population, civil population, as human shields, and the fact that they continue to do that, the fact that they are actually trading with food and humanitarian aid against their own population. So basically, they are responsible for the entire situation, both for our hostages and the starvation of their own kids and their own people. And had the world had, I would say, the presence of mind and also the conscientious, I would say, trait, they would put all the pressure on Hamas. That would be also through Qatar and Turkey and Egypt, all those countries that support, into one extent or another, the Hamas. And this is what could mitigate the situation.
But we know, Donnie, that a few Arab countries just last week actually condemned October 7th, and they told Hamas, it is time that you disarm. So where are we now? Will the terror group ever willingly disarm? What will it take for them to step down, if that ever even happens? Or will it take Israel to do something else? What will it take?
Yeah, well, I believe that at this point, it seems like the Hamas has been very much encouraged by their propaganda campaign of starvation, which most of the international community fell prey to this in a either cynically or either naively, doesn't matter. But this has actually toughened the Hamas approach, and at this point, they're not willing to take the compromise that Israel was willing to actually offer a few weeks ago. So that leads us to one of two situations. Either the Hamas will understand that in order to save their own necks and the leadership of Hamas, whoever is remained in Gaza, they should allow all the hostages, let them free, and for that they could get a free passage out. And I think it's certain that we cannot do a part deal. It has to be one stage, all of them
Right.
against everything that has been agreed to. If this is not the case, then indeed we will have to take over Gaza in one way or another in a smart way. I'm not sure that the military would go into all the alleys which are just infested with Hamas, but there are other ways to do it, and certainly limit their capabilities all the way until they surrender.
Right. You mentioned basically doing one big comprehensive deal that gets all of the 50 hostages out, while also, of course, trying to end the war. That brings me just to my next topic. We know that Witkoff, told the families of hostages that, the Trump administration and him, they're working to get this comprehensive deal. But I think also the new information about Israel wanting to fully take over militarily inside of the Gaza Strip shows that these talks between Israel and Hamas are at a complete impasse at this point in time. What is your take on a full Israeli takeover of the Gaza Strip?
Well, I think this is not the most, I would say, preferred way to go ahead, but that could be the least of many bad options. It's up to Hamas, and so long as Hamas will not free the hostages and continues to keep the entire population of Gaza under their own thumb, we may have no choice, and this may be just the last call or the last chance of Hamas to get their leaders free and safe, pretty much, out of Gaza. If this is not the case, I think Israel will have no choice but to eradicate Hamas until the last one of them. It may take time, but it is doable.
And just your final thoughts, specifically on the fact that, we're hearing that there could be some tensions between the IDF chief of staff and potentially Netanyahu's plan to fully take over the Gaza Strip. What is your take on this? What could be the future relationship between the two of them if the IDF chief of staff doesn't believe it's a good idea to fully take over the Gaza Strip? And why doesn't he think it possibly could be a good idea?
Well, I believe that this is a healthy thing, that there is some dissent and crystallizing different thoughts. The chief of staff he is a professional, and he has to give his honest and full ideas and views. At the end of the day, everybody understands that it is the political echelon that makes the decision, and the IDF stands ready to do whatever is needed or instructed by the cabinet or the government. Now, it is true that the chief of staff has specific considerations. That is about the force size, about different tactics that would save as much as possible Israeli soldiers' lives. So this is where you get into the real specifics and the nitty-gritty. I think there's not much difference when you talk about the overall objective. So the strategy is the same between it's identical, the chief of staff and the cabinet. The issue is the tactical steps on the ground, and here I think the IDF will have precedence because they are there, they have the experience, and they are the ones who know what to do best in order to do it effectively with life-saving as much as possible.
Danny Ayalon, thanks so much for being with us as always.
My pleasure.
And we are learning that Latvia rejects recognition of a Palestinian state. They announced this opposition to recognizing a state, saying that it would not help resolve the conflict. The announcement by the Lithuanian president comes after a meeting with visiting President Isaac Herzog during a state visit, where Herzog held up 2 photos of severely emaciated Israeli hostages that we continue to talk about, Braslavski and Evyatar David, and declared that their horrific treatment of Israeli hostages by Hamas and PIJ must shake the conscience of the entire world, and further evidence of the cruel torture inflicted on innocent Israelis, even as Israel ensures the delivery of humanitarian aid. Let's take a listen to what President Herzog had to say about this.
But the truth of the matter is, in order to realize a peace between 2 nations, you have to have a real capability of delivering something which is viable. Right now, the Palestinian people are torn between 2 entities. One is controlled by the Palestinian Authority and one is by Hamas. And if you ask an average Israeli, does he believe it's feasible to get to a 2-state solution, a solution with a peaceful neighbor, like I crossed the border today from Lithuania to Latvia easily? The answer will be no, because following October 7th, it was a wake-up call for many Israelis. This was a peaceful border which was shattered by a brutal terrorist organization which abducted, killed, burnt, and raped our people.
And moving over to Lebanon now, in a direct challenge to Hezbollah, the government of Lebanon has now has officials tasked its army with limiting arms to state forces. The Lebanese cabinet approved the move and the plan to establish a state monopoly on arms by the end of the year. The move by the Lebanese cabinet follows pressure from Washington demanding that Lebanon publicly commit to disarming Hezbollah and worry that Israel could intensify strikes on Lebanon if they fail to do so. Hezbollah continues to reject the calls to disarm, but is under pressure since last year's devastating war with Israel. And that is a wrap here on ILTV on the hour. We're continuing to follow all of the updates as they continue to come out. Specifically, we're following what is happening with Prime Minister Netanyahu about a possible full military takeover of the Gaza Strip. He convened with top security officials just last night in a 3-hour meeting to discuss the possible options in order to proceed in the war in Gaza. They were all presented by the IDF Chief of Staff. We also know at this time Defense Minister Israel Katz was on the ground inside of the Gaza Strip yesterday, meeting with the military and the IDF forces on the ground as well. He said that the IDF will carry out any policy the government decides to do. This is pretty much the biggest topic right now. That, of course, as hostage and ceasefire talks are clearly at an impasse between Israel and Hamas. In addition addition to the 2 horrific videos that Hamas and PIJ released. We also have an app you can join. Scan the QR code on your screen right now. Make sure you're getting all the live updates from ILTV on the hour so you can stay informed with all of the latest news and updates from the Middle East and Israel. That's a wrap. Thanks so much. See you soon.